Hello, everyone. So in this episode, I'll summarize the class discussion we had that was done this week. It's about the impact of ChatGPT on careers in finance that many of you pursuing finance degree as an undergrad may be having. So before I do this, let me just give you some of the recent progress that these deep learning models had. Yeah, so when it comes to coding, there's this cognition lab had developed a month back um, a large language model that can actually do coding, not quite as good as um, a professional senior programmer, but as an entry-level program, it seems fairly impressive that many programs actually say. It's called Devin. So that is in the area of coding. Uh, and then also, I thought that something that's difficult to automate would be like developing new materials in a lab. And it turns out that Google engineers actually did that. So they learned all the chemistry, material science research papers in deep learning model, and then had come up with, I don't know, 400,000 new materials, and then connected to a robot operated lab and actually created many of them and tested them properties, which is actually mind-boggling. Some say that it's like 1,000 year worth of progress of material science. Uh, and then another thing that people thought that would be difficult, but it turns out it could be done. And the beginning of approach is that the mathematical proof. So there's a competition, a world competition called International Math Olympiad. It's a really difficult exam, and typically a gold medalist will get something out of 25 points around. Um, it involves a lot of proofs. And it turns out that the Google DeepMind deep learning program like AlphaGo, there's AlphaGeometry, and that actually scored much better than an average contestant, uh, but also like very close to a gold medalist level. So it turns out that deep learning can do proof too. So naturally, it maps into finance too. Um, so the recent one that I saw and by Google searching was that it can do when someone scraped the SEC filings um, and then train it to write analyst reports. So analyst job can be um, um, simulated with this large language model. Another one is venture capital. Um, so this was done by the people at Yale University. Um, they scraped the CEO, the founder pitches, the presentations to get funding. If you think about Shark Tank, it's something like this. For some of the online accelerators, the startup pitches are available on YouTube. So they collected many YouTube videos of such and then trained it and then make it predict whether it will get funding or not. And tons of screening founders from the venture capitalist perspective can also be great. Also, someone actually used the large language model to get macroeconomic sentiment. So this Federal Reserve policy, macro predictions, and these kind of things can be done too. All in all, the topic today that I had discussion with my students was that AI strategy is threatening especially because the people pursuing finance degrees. So what what do we think? What should we do? Kind of things were under discussion, and here are some of the highlights that. Yeah. So I guess what kind of jobs are likely to be at risk? in the media, it says that the routine, highly compensated tasks are at risk, and that could be like three or intermediate level finance accounting job. One would think that, oh, there are many intelligent people, but it costs money to introduce and implement AI in a company. So if one intellectual job can be done that is highly compensated, that's even go back for a while from the company's perspective. So those jobs, ironically, tend to be exposed to risk. And from a perspective that there are many optimism that industrial revolution replaced manual labor, and it always created jobs. Um, some pointed out that, well, the industrial revolution replaced manual labor, and then where did the people go? Eventually, they shifted to mental work. That's why we have in advanced economies so many large service sector. This time around, the revolution is replacing mental work. So the question really is that is yet to be answered is where would future displaced work be displaced? So that is kind of the current challenge we have. Yeah. It's not just the workers, it actually is related to have a broad macroeconomic perspective, which is the profit model of the company is that they hire workers, workers get wages, the workers with the wages become consumers and buy the products of the company. That sort of is how the ecosystem works. And now we displace the workers, they don't get wages. How could companies sell the product? Is an interesting question to solve. So in this regard, some say that maybe there should be introduced a robot tax that um, taxes the firms that benefit from this automation. It's not just robot, but it's also the large language models like ChatGPT and all this. Let's tax these companies and then give the citizens universal basic income, UBI, so that these people can become consumers. And then the question is it the cure for all? Then one has to think that, what about the incentives? If everybody gets equal amount of money, then um, who wants to actually walk and keep making progress? And currently, the argument is just like some people must be born with immense curiosity and love to work. Um, I'm not sure it's sustainable kind of argument. So there needs to be something to be thought. So with all this movement along, some of the discussions that came, what would future finance career would or should look like, and we had a reflection on what kind of task were sort of immune or less resilient in the past when an automation came um, to this kind of new innovation, and turns out the value assignment kind of tests tend to be better than performance-oriented tests. Unfortunately, a lot of finance is about performance, how much return profit you made, rather than value assignment, which is like a sports medal. We don't give gold medal to kind of cars that run fast. We give gold medal to a sprinter who actually sprints the Olympic game, isn't it? Um, so, or religion, something like this. Um, and so, and also, other people point out that the care and experience kind of task. So the care is like, although there might be machines augmenting, but it turns out that for a lot of the care, the nursing, there's a lot of human element to it that will take a long time to replace. Another area is this experience. So I guess the analogy would be in Detroit airport, recently I traveled and I saw that at McDonald's there are kiosks that you punch the key instead of a person taking the order. Um, but then somewhere in Paris, like in Hermes or Louis Vuitton stores, like the upscale stores, I have hard time imagining that there will be a kiosk and not having a guide to introduce the premium good. So that is kind of that there will be still a premium service that will be done, and one could think that some of the wealth management and all this task will not be fully automated and will still have a human element in that. Um, Also, um, right now, what's probably at very risk is the tasks that are intermediate entry level of finance. Many finance jobs are fairly exposed, but um, there will always, of course, be a senior partner at the major investment banks or consulting firms, um, because we need accountability. So somebody has to be eventually, for human beings, to be responsible and make a choice. So those tasks are kind of resilient. But then it's kind of concerning still, because if let's say the entry positions are largely um, um, displaced, then um, it makes it hard to have an industry with a career, isn't it? And some of the humanities kind of areas in recent years, because there are not too many jobs as opposed to STEM fields, um, then you want to be a writer and all this, and there's always a need for Malcolm Gladwell on this famous writer, but there's no really viable career, say, to become Malcolm Gladwell. Then they'll have to work from several jobs at the same time and odd jobs, and that makes it really an undesirable situation, even for a career path. So how do we kind of have a meaningful and invent and come up with the idea that there will be meaningful career paths for the finance industry, is what we should really think about. And in some sense, I think one of the essence of this innovation this time with large language model is that um, the AGI, or even before AGI, this current innovation is already, it basically democratizes expertise of knowledge, such that I guess an hypothetical example might be that if there's a X-ray diagnosing kind of image processing kind of app is on iPhone, then in the old days one has to make an appointment with a radiologist and get diagnosed what that is. Now, the image processing sensor can basically take a picture of that X-ray and then could quickly give a diagnosis. So I don't know how true that is, but this is sort of the hypothetical example of how expertise then um, gets basically democratized. So everybody has access to this expert knowledge. This is largely true for many PhDs. We got a premium in the past, but now that knowledge is basically being um, kind of at low cost being distributed. So the monopoly rents probably will be shrinking in economics terms. Another thing that people thought that we are very resilient as a human being was creativity and intuition that the machines will never ever do. I guess that creativity now we are debating less after 2023. And in fact, we are rethinking what do we mean by creativity? So in the old days, there was something that's magical in the brain that comes and synthesizes to come up with a very original new idea, kind of this. But turns out that this generative AI trained on all data and then tried to come up with basically a new combination of new thing in image and art and songs. Um, and it turns out that then looking back, many of the things we do are really probably a rare combination, but a new combination of the old things we do. Even for research, what we do typically tends to build on and make a minor improvement on the existing work. So really, are we overvaluing the human part of the creativity? At least a substantial part of the creativity seems to be now at threat. The other thing is intuition, that all the humans have insights and intuition that the machines cannot. I wouldn't be so quick about it. Because at the end of the day, what is intuition? Some psychologists say that the humans are inherently two-dimensional animals, so we do map and everything processed to two-dimension before we actually make perceive things. And well, machine can, well, largely people agree that can capture a very complex phenomenon that may be very, very high dimension. But then also there are dimensional reduction techniques in many, many alternative techniques to doing this, which can reduce to 2 or 3 dimensions. Um, and so the machine can capture very high dimensional of the realistically the what's going on in the world, and then reduce it down to 2 dimensions, and that is sort of a good start of the intuition. So we have to see how far the next progress will be heading to. Well, so that leads to um, some of the these are some of the concerns. But then again, can we use it to advantage um, in finance Korea? Well, long time ago, there was a person who invented calculus named Gottfried Leibniz. He had sort of thought of it this sort of universal machine that hypothetically, if there's a machine, then can do this reasoning and all this on behalf of us. Is that a bad thing? And that person thought that not necessarily. It's like when we have a magnifying glass in analogy, and then we can see many details and focus and not distracted by all the things we see with our bare eye, but focus on the very, very fine things and make discovery on its own. Like this, a thinking machine could be like a magnifying glass of the thoughts that we will be relieved of the mundane reasoning tasks. Um, like calculator had removed the need for really adding and subtracting numbers, and then we can do more complex calculations. This thinking machine can probably relieve us of the small elementary tasks of reasoning and intellectual tasks, and then we can focus on a broader picture of a more complex thinking phenomenon using those machines. That's what he thought, and maybe that is a hint to um, kind of where finance should be leading to in that regards. Posing a question, although we could ask ChatGPT to come up with 10 questions of in finance area that's new and all this, eventually coming up with a good question, or even if we got aided from a ChatGPT of asking question, selecting a good question that is valuable to human being or to you or the people like-minded like you is probably your test. So the curiosity and the question, asking good question is probably still a domain of human um, a human domain. And the compassion of experience work, as I said, is there. Um, so what kind of careers at the end of the day we thought like useful and finance and give us a hint for finance career would be because instead of observing patterns of the market, engineer to create a new market. And so in the currently we are being our high students are being hired by knowing how to calculate CAPM, net present value, and all this, and help the CEO at the CEO just things. But rather than doing that, maybe like engineers, they learn Newton's law, but what they large part of the engineers do is to invent things, isn't it? To invent cars, invent computers, and maybe the finance should be something like inventors. They use these many economic principles to invent something new. And I guess a recent example was that there was a judge at a venture capital competition, and there was a fintech firm uh, that came up with this idea that there's a recent trend of young people delaying marriage, but they live together as partners. And then one of the issues is that how to split the cost of dating, going to the movie, going for the dinner, and all this. And there's this app that basically pools uh, the finances of and automatically splits the cost, so there's no argument of probably a lot of kind of app programming and some financial tax knowledge embedded in there. And what the essence is that there is a person at the center that realizes a gap in the society, that there is a demand for certain financial service, and then come up with many skills and these things to actually come up with a market and product. So you invented something financially. kind of maybe the future finance part of the career would be like in financial event, I think to create on financial products would be. The other thing is that maybe the big firms, like the big consulting firms, train all the past consulting documents and reports into deep learning and ChatGPT and create their own consulting GPT, less of the junior level consultants. But then on the other side, on the other hand, it could be the advantage that now the large language model or in the future will become so good that you don't need like a team like of like 10 people visiting the client firm to diagnose and compute the report. Maybe um, now just a single person or an app could actually do this. So now there will be a single person consulting firms like this, and maybe these large consulting firms will be like a dinosaur and less adaptable. So there will be an ecosystem of a one person consulting firm, investment banking firm would be like this. And at least in this world, one person business kind of world becomes very popular. Then what I think would be necessary is that because everybody can at low cost access these large language model, then the domain of expertise probably is something what you need to have to distinguish from other people creating their own app. So these were the kind of things that were um, discussed during the talk. Um, um, there were also some questions that came along that students suggested and had uh, for example, regarding the robot tax idea, that the robot tax might not work due to taxes being less than employee salaries. So could that be sustainable? How, um, or at least that we might be worse off. Uh, and again, the incentive problems cause less productivity for some companies based on what the market they're in, uh, things like this. Um, um, Regarding the creativity and all this, and only a human like characteristics, where one points out that and there's no causality in all this. But in terms of ideation, human thinking could also be considered as a black box, which makes things like creativity some weight and biases in their thinking. Kind of would be some of the suggestions we had. Uh, uh, there were also some of these kind of questions on my view. Well, some classes seem to ban using AI products and doing in the classroom. And for example, if your teacher prevents you, then please don't use it. My personal take is in my coding classes, especially my deep learning class, I do actively actually give homeworks using that accesses the API and all that you can see in my YouTube channel. So I think that even if you're not able to use AI in the classroom, I think you should have the ability to use it if you choose to and need to have it in the future. So keeping up with the technology is very important. But even more in the long run, I think that banning AI in education is probably, in my personal view, a futile attempt. It's more like becoming a calculator in classroom that you cannot forever ban it, rather teach students how to use those tools to advantage to do or even more complex tasks is probably the way to go. Anyway, so those were the kind of things that were in discussion. in the classroom. And I'm sharing this video because I think there might be many students out there and finance undergrad students who are wondering right now. And these are all personal opinions by me and the students, so by no means you should always make your own judgment. But to see how other people think, maybe it gives you some idea to start thinking about this issue. So hopefully this video helps in this regards, right? Thank you for watching this episode.